Before we get straight into the podcast, I just want to give a huge shout out to our sponsors, Kirby GAA Star. Declan Kirby GAA Star Championship Journey. It's a series of GAA team children's books written by primary school teacher and GAA coach Michael Egan. You can check it out in the link in the description down below, of course, as well. Follow the trials and tribulations of Declan Kirby and his team at Smithgreen Gaelic Football Club, recently formed a promising GAA team. The book is now available in Easons and all good bookshops, so check it out in the description down below, and let's get straight into it. Welcome back to GAA Fan TV. It's the Gameday Preview ahead of this weekend's action in the Allianz National Football League. There's a whole host of games really taking place across all four divisions, Division 1, 2, 3 and 4, a whole host of action really. And I'm delighted to have Shay Brady here with me from the Play On GAA podcast to run through this weekend's action. Shay, how are you?
Very good, Aaron. Thanks for having me on again. Really enjoyed last weekend's action. It's fantastic to really have the league back. And yeah, there's some crackers here, like very, very hard games to call.
Yeah, there really is. There's a whole host of action, really. And I suppose only one way to start, really, with the clash of heavyweights, and it's Kerry and Dublin, and obviously a classic in its own right, really going down the years. I mean, it's a game that rarely disappoints. Like, even you think down the years, sometimes you might maybe have a bit of a disappointing clash between Dublin and Mayo or Dublin and Tyrone. Like, not all big games live up to expectation, and probably barring the 2015 All Ireland final, like these two, when they play each other, it's usually always a classic and huge entertainment to watch.
Yeah, without doubt. I mean, I loved in particular the 2020 league match between Kerry and Dublin, the one where it ended with the two frees, with Clifford hitting over that free right at the end, and then the big scuffle at the end. And it was a real kind of tee up for the next championship game, which we all thought we were going to get. But then obviously Kerry got knocked out in Munster. But yeah, you're right. The league games always deliver. I mean, 2019 as well, that was Peter Crowley fisted the ball over right at the end. Kerry got the win that day. And then obviously that led on to the All Ireland final later that season. This year, I think it's so different because I think Dublin looked so toothless against Armagh. And I've never seen a league game really with Dublin and Kerry where Dublin have their backs against the wall as much as they do this time. I mean, in other years where Dublin would have gone down to play Kerry in Tralee, for example, Dublin would have gone down as the all-conquering Dubs, and Kerry were looking to almost claim a scalp. Now, Kerry, you know, I see them personally as favourites. Dublin don't look like they're as strong. I know Kerry didn't beat Kildare, but I think home advantage, how pumped up they'll be, it's looking dangerous for Dublin, in my opinion, because their backs are already against the wall after such a poor start.
Yeah, 100%. Like, and speaking of Dublin, first of all, I mean, it was obviously I did my own reaction after the game, and I listened to your own reaction as well over on Play On GAA, and we were speaking about it in the podcast sort of on Monday there. Like, it is sort of bizarre. I've watched the game twice now, and it's just, it is very strange, like how quick a team can sort of downfall so quickly. I mean, it was only at the start of 2021 where very little people at all were really fancying against the Dubs. Like, everyone was going 7 in a row, and then all of a sudden defeated by Mayo, defeated by Armagh, and now you're looking at it and you're thinking, you know, almost everyone in Division 1 probably fancies a crack at the Dubs now.
Yep, you're absolutely right. And the thing that was most worrying was, I said this to Luke kind of off air as well, I said the frightening thing was the lack of players to come back. I mean, you got James McCarthy who's coming back. Okay, yeah, he'll improve the side a lot. You got Con, who, you know, we don't really know, is he coming back or is he going hurling? But obviously he'd be a big boost if he came back. We know Mannion's not coming back. We know Cluxon's not coming back. We know McCaffrey's not coming back. So that was the thing that was most frightening, is that it was as close to a full strength Dublin side as is comfortable. Like, that we're like, here, I'm not 100% sure that we'd beat Armagh if we were at our full strength now, seeing how comfortably they beat us when we were nearly at our full strength. And to think that Armagh weren't at their full strength either. You know, Stephen Campbell didn't start. In my opinion, he does start for Armagh. And Oisin O'Neill wasn't there either. So definitely worrying. Obviously, Jamie Clark isn't there for Armagh either. So they're not at their full contingent. And they still swept us aside. It wasn't even like a victory. I never thought Dublin were going to win that game from when the 2 goals went in. I never thought we were going to win. With Kerry, I think I didn't really gather much from the Kildare game. They'd be disappointed with how it ended. I mean, they were a few points up with a few minutes to go, and they let Kildare. Jimmy Hyland got the brace right at the end to kind of grab a draw for Kildare. They'd be disappointed with how that went. But I think we'll get more into how Jack O'Connor is going to play with Kerry this time in this game, I feel.
Yeah, who do you think the pressure's on more, either Kerry or Dublin? Because I think a lot of people looking at Kerry as the All Ireland favourites, the team that can go on and win the All Ireland. I think people have been saying that for years, really. Like, and you know, people were expecting Jack O'Connor's Kerry to really hit the ground running, given the fact that how strong they went in pre-season. And look, with all due respect to Kildare, they definitely surprised me, and I'd wrote them off completely, really going into Division 1. And I think they have a serious chance now, maybe, of staying up. But like, a lot of people fancied Kerry for that game, and obviously Dublin, like, I think everyone fancied Dublin really going up. You know, maybe Armagh fans seeing what was coming there, but you know, both sides coming into this without a win. Whoever loses could be under serious pressure going into match day 3. Both have tough games coming up as well. So who do you think the pressure's on more, Jack O'Connor or Dessie Farrell?
Dessie, 100%, because I feel like Dublin were at the top of the mountain. Dublin hit the top, and when you're at the top, the only way to go is down, unfortunately. And Dublin are kind of skidding. And I feel like Kerry, while they have taken longer than a lot of people would have thought, I still think they're moving up. They're getting better year on year, in my opinion. And O'Connor, the appointment, I think, was the right one. I think Peter Keane, I think his time was up. I think Kerry won't see pressure here. I think they'll see an opportunity. I think they'll see a chance to really bury Dublin here quite convincingly, in my opinion. I can see this being a 5-point win for Kerry, like where they actually, you know, put Dublin to the sword a little bit, because Dublin are a wounded animal right now. That can be dangerous. And obviously I seen you posted yourself that Bernard Brogan tweet where he was saying, you know, be careful how much you write Dublin off, because, you know, we can't forget how good Fenton is, how good Brian Howard is, how good Ciarán Kilkenny is. But I just think the way that they started so poorly against Armagh, when they had so much time to prepare against a weaker team than Kerry, I think Dublin are under so much pressure right now, and I think Kerry will just see an opportunity to really get one over on an old rival.
Yeah, I do agree to a certain extent, but I think at the same time, like, there is still, I think, a lot of pressure on Jack O'Connor and Kerry as well, because they will go into this game as favourites, and having seen how poor Dublin were against Armagh, having seen how poor they were against Mayo, and really their fall from grace. I think, you know, if Kerry were to lose against Dublin in their own home patch in Tralee, I think it would raise a lot of pressure potentially on Jack O'Connor, because look, there's still a long way to go, and we know there's obviously still 5 more league games to go after this, and we've seen teams bounce back from poor league campaigns. Tyrone last year, the perfect example. But like, if Kerry were to lose this game, be on 1 point from 2 matches, potentially, you know, down near in the relegation places, you know, there'd be huge pressure on Jack O'Connor there as well. Do you not think?
Yeah, I do think, because he was brought in, I think, for immediate impact as well. I think the one thing that a lot of people in the country wouldn't understand is the level of expectation in Kerry. They're used to winning All Irelands pretty much all the time. They haven't won one since 2014. Like, that's an ancient amount of time for Kerry to go without winning an All Ireland. You know, they win one every decade pretty much. And with this crop of talent that came through, I mean, the thing that always frightened me was Dublin's dominance came off the back of one minor All Ireland title. Kerry won 5 in a row. So this talent is coming. And obviously we've seen it with O'Shea and the Cliffords and all these guys coming through. But they're getting a bit impatient now for the All Ireland, I feel. So I feel like you have a good point there in Jack O'Connor, that he was brought in for an immediate impact. And yeah, I think that if they start facing relegation right at the beginning of his term, I think that he will be facing serious pressure. But the reason that I would go for Dessie is because Dessie was already under pressure with the year beginning because of how last year had gone, the unhappy camp, all the players not playing. You know, Jack O'Connor has pretty much everyone playing for Kerry that could be. I know James O'Donoghue retired, but that's a bit of a different issue. But Jack O'Connor didn't have pressure on him at the start of the year, whereas Dessie did. And I feel like if he loses back-to-back games, I mean, Dublin's seriously looking at the drop then, and I feel like he'll be under a lot of pressure then.
Yeah, and you have Mayo up next, and then we travel to Kildare and Tyrone back to back. And looking how Kildare played against Kerry as well, like I wouldn't look at that game as a sure win either. So there's all sorts of pressure really on Dublin going into this. Like, and just being devil's advocate for a minute, like I was speaking to a fellow Dublin fan there, like on Saturday night, not long after the game, and he was even saying, look, you know, is it really as bad as what people are making it out to be? Like pre-Mayo, we'd lost, I think, one game in our last 20 under Desi Farrell, and that was away to Tyrone in a league game just right before the pandemic. So, like, is it as bad really as people are making out? Like, considering, I know, like, you know, all the league games count, all the points add up. So, you know, you can't just say it's only January because all the games matter. But like, are people getting carried away a little bit, or do you really do think that there really is a serious fall from grace here from this Dublin team?
I think that if you look at it on paper, yeah, people are a little bit overreacting. I mean, 2 defeats in not that long. But I think if you're more to look at the performance, that I'd be a little bit more like, because even when Dublin were winning, they were winning in the Leinster Championship, but they weren't impressive. They beat Meath, but Meath dominated the second half. There was that type of element that I was saying, that the exhilarating football that Jim Gavin's sides plays that kept us on the edge of our seats. I mean, the best example I can give is the third quarter against Mayo in 2019 when we blitzed them and the game was over in that third quarter. I haven't really seen a Desi Farrell team do that. So when the style of football isn't as exhilarating as it was previously, and then it's not successful anymore either, people are willing to accept it if it still gets them All Irelands, etc. But now that we've been beaten, and now that we were beaten again, that, I mean, if we had won our first league game and then lost to Armagh, I don't think the reaction would have been as severe as it is now. But because it's back-to-back defeats, I know a lot of time in between, but it is still back-to-back defeats. It's the first time that Dublin have lost back-to-back games in Croke Park since 2010. So that's taken a lot of people by surprise. And yeah, so I feel like it's justified to be reacting like this, because as well as this, the talent coming through, I don't think is what it once was.
Yeah, we are recording this live as well, so if anyone wants to get their comments in and thoughts on the game or anything like that, feel free. Sharon Hegarty says there, I think with Kerry playing at home, it might help them a little bit, and that's exactly it. That's exactly the point, isn't it, with Kerry being in Tralee? What's your verdict then? You're going for a Kerry victory? You think they're going to turn over Dublin and make Dublin 2 losses from 2?
Yeah, sadly, that was a game there on the weekend where Dublin, everything was in their favour. They had home advantage. They had more of the crowd. You know, they had a weakened Armagh team without Oisin O'Neill, as I mentioned, and they lost comfortably. They didn't even lose narrowly. They lost comfortably. And Armagh are a team that a lot of people would have been looking at as potential relegation candidates before the league, not as All Ireland contenders. Everyone's looking at Kerry as All Ireland contenders. As she said there, it's down in Kerry. The crowd will be pumped up. I mean, remember 2019, how pumped up the crowd in Kerry was. Now, obviously, due to the pandemic and everything, now crowds are back. They're going to be lively, ready for the Dubs to come down. They can't wait to get stuck into them. I feel like it'll just be a bit of a carnival atmosphere, and I think it's set up for Kerry to claim the 2 points.
Yeah, I agree as well. Last time Dublin won in Kerry as well was 2013, which is obviously, you know, completely different scenario back then as well. And I think Kerry had a weak enough midfield against Kildare, but Joe O'Connor was named captain there during the week, so you'd expect him to start. And to be honest with you, I think Dublin won the midfield battle against Armagh, and Armagh just bypassed the midfield really. So I don't even think Dublin winning the midfield battle would make that much of a point really. I think Kerry could just bypass the midfield and kick direct into Clifford or Killian Spillane, and I think that probably will be enough. Moving on to Armagh and Tyrone, I mean, this is another real sort of humdinger in many ways, like clash of not heavyweights maybe in terms of, well, Tyrone are All Ireland champions, but in terms of the history really between these two, like still hugely significant rivalries for these two counties going back as far as the early 2000s. And maybe this rivalry might be back again where it once was, because Tyrone are obviously All Ireland champions. Armagh are definitely on the up as well. So very looking forward to this game.
Yeah, and I mean, you mentioned it yourself about the 2000s games. Like, my God, they were unbelievable clashes, and I would have loved to have kind of seen them live in the flesh. I mean, it would have been unbelievable to witness. But I mean, Armagh have improved so much in a short space of time under McGeaney. I think with Tyrone as well, there will be that element that Monaghan had of, you aren't the All Ireland champions when you're playing against us. So I can see it being very similar to the Monaghan game. A lot of kind of handbags, a lot of off the ball stuff. Very, very tough game. But Armagh are coming into this with such momentum, like the confidence that they're going to have. Rian O'Neill now, I think whoever Tyrone put on him, I think that could be a massive, massive indicator for who's going to win. I think it will probably be Paddy Hampsey, but I don't know. I think it'll be very, very interesting how they curtail him. Whether Cathal McShane will start, who's going to pick him up on the other side, because Aidan Forker, I know he plays full back there for Armagh, but I mean, he was always more of a wing back and a wing forward. So it'll be interesting to see if he's put handling someone like McShane.
Is it too early to look at Armagh's All Ireland contenders for 2022, or is there still a bit to go yet, do you think?
I think it's a bit early. I could famous last words, but I think it could be a little bit too early. I think one victory. I mean, one thing that I remember is, do you remember 2019 where Monaghan beat Dublin up in Monaghan? Stephen O'Hanlon got the goal, and all of a sudden everyone was saying, "Oh, Monaghan have won a few Ulster titles in the last few years, and now they've beaten the four in a row All Ireland champions Dublin. Maybe Monaghan, can be All Ireland contenders," and they ended up not doing much in the league or the championship. So I feel like this victory is definitely a crowning moment for Armagh. But if they beat Tyrone, and if they beat them in, if they really grind it out and they show their class and they beat the All Ireland champions, then I would start to really kind of take notice of them, because obviously every team can have their day where everything goes right for them. And obviously the one thing that we didn't say when we were talking about the Dublin game is how clinical Armagh were. I mean, I think they only hit was it 1 or 2 wides in the entire game, whereas Dublin hit 13 wides. So, I mean, if they manage to beat Tyrone again, then I think we have to start looking at them as possible dark horses. But I don't think their talent is up there with Tyrone or Kerry just yet.
Yeah, I definitely would give them a huge chance to win this game, though. Tyrone probably still have a few players potentially to come back in there. There was no Ronan McNamee in that game against Monaghan. You still have Kieran McGeary to come in there potentially as well into the well, actually he was back out. He was sent off, wasn't he, in the last game? So there's definitely some players still potentially to come back in there for Tyrone, and we've seen Armagh turn Tyrone over in pre-season, and I'd imagine as well, like you were saying there about there being a bit of a carnival atmosphere in Tralee. I think there'll be something similar in the Athletic Grounds. I think the Armagh fans are going to be buzzing really after their win over Dublin. And, even last year in the league when Armagh played Tyrone, it was a very close game. And I remember Mark Bradley, I think, came off the bench and scored a late goal. And he's obviously opted out for Tyrone. So there could be a chance here for a big scalp for Armagh. And 2 wins from 2 against Tyrone and Dublin. They might be looking at, battling for a league final then.
Yeah, and I mean, you mentioned it yourself, I don't think they've had a better chance to beat Tyrone. I mean, over the last few years. Just reading that from Sharon. Yeah, I mean, the Ulster Championship is so wide open, and obviously with Cavan winning it in 2020, you can never really write off, a team managing to upset the odds in Ulster. I do think that they're underdogs. I do think with the level of talent that Tyrone have, even with Mark Bradley being gone, I think the level of talent that Tyrone have is unbelievable. But when you look at, Fermanagh got to the Ulster final a few years ago, the talent seems to be pretty even. All the games are so tight. You've got Antrim coming on as well. All the games are going to be so close. And Armagh are just continuously improving. If they beat Tyrone, I mean, that would be a huge step forward for them.
Do you think maybe this is the game where maybe Tyrone click into gear as well? Obviously in pre-season, they were away on a holiday there in Miami just before pre-season, and then in the first game against Monaghan, I felt like Monaghan had them at different points in the game, and I felt like Monaghan were a little bit the better team. But even saying that, I don't think either side were particularly great in the game at all. So could maybe this be the game where Tyrone turn up, given the fact that there is a big rivalry here, and also as well they will have seen Armagh and seeing what they done against Dublin, like this might be a chance maybe for Tyrone to maybe, I suppose, give Armagh a bit of a reality check really and just remind them, look, listen, we're the All Ireland champions, we're still here.
Yeah, could definitely be because I mean, the one thing that you never want is your rival to get going again. And I mean, another Armagh Tyrone clash, always going to bring the best out of both sides. So I feel like it will be very close. I feel like it will be very close. If I had to put my neck on the line, I think I'd go. I think you're right. I think the Tyrone will wake up. They won't want Armagh to beat them. I think I'd go Tyrone by a couple of points. Just about. I think you were right there about that they didn't play their best against Monaghan. But one thing that I was impressed with was how they dug in against Monaghan. Because in the last few minutes there, Monaghan are 1 point behind. They have a big win behind their back. You'd be looking at that saying, Tyrone probably would have taken a draw at that stage. And to think that, that Paul Donaghy point at the end, I mean, probably they should have got the point out of that. I mean, it was the right decision because Kilpatrick flattened Rory Beggan. But they should have won that. That ball should have gone over the bar, no problem anyway. So they were inches away from winning that game. They showed the heart, they showed the grit, the determination, and now they've got their feet back under the table. I think they'll win this one by a point or two.
Yeah, and Sir Klopp says they have a feeling Tyrone will get another draw, and it is a good point. Like I seen a stat there on Twitter the other day. There's been more draws in the last 10 games in Division 1 than there has been wins or loses. So, I mean, if you're a punter or anything like that, like you'd maybe want to put your money on a lot of games drawn because it does seem to be what's happening at the minute. I'm actually going to go for Armagh. I just have a sneaky feeling with the form that they're in, that they're coming into this game, how well they played against Dublin, and given the fact that they're playing at the Athletic Grounds at home as well. And I think if these two were to meet each other, maybe in the Ulster Championship, potentially in an Ulster final, which could be the case with the fact that both sides are on either side of the draw. Look, obviously that's a long way away, but I think Tyrone would probably be up to the challenge of winning by the time that game comes around. But just have a sneaky feeling that Armagh, with Rian O'Neill and potentially Oisin O'Neill, Conor Turbot maybe to come back in, I reckon they'll have enough to turn Tyrone over there. But Monaghan and Mayo, that's up next. And I mean, this is a hard one to call as well because first half Mayo didn't really click into gear at all against Donegal, but again came fighting back from the dead in traditional Mayo fashion. And Monaghan on the other hand side of things, again, sometimes when you think they're beaten against Tyrone, they fight back from the dead. So both sides probably coming into this in a familiar sort of story really from the last league game.
Yeah, I mean, Mayo showed the spirit that we all know that they have, fighting back against Donegal, although I do think Donegal should have put the game to bed. But for Monaghan, I mean, they're two different enough games. I mean, the Monaghan game against Tyrone, I feel like was tough inch for inch the entire game. I mean, like point for point, they never really let a lead, whereas Mayo completely switched off for the first half. I mean, I know that the conditions were awful, but the 4 point gap between themselves and Donegal, I think that flattered Mayo. I think Donegal were far the better team in the first half. Mayo showed a lot of grit in the second half to pull that game back. I mean, some brilliant scores. Paddy Durkin, the Ryan O'Donoghue free was brilliant. And then obviously Rob Henley at the end, fantastic free to level it. But I think it's very, very hard to tell where these teams are at. I mean, we didn't really see much of the skill of either side, of much of how their kick passing is, how their shooting is. We just saw grit from both teams, grit and determination, and then obviously a bit of individual class at the end to get the draws. But I feel like I don't really know how they've hit the ground running, because Monaghan and Tyrone, you're always going to expect a real gritty, determined game from both sides, and that's exactly what we got. Mayo, we're kind of used to them fighting back from deficits, pulling it back and getting a result when you thought they were dead and buried. So both sides are kind of doing exactly what we know them to do. So I find it hard to know who's in a better place right now.
Yeah, it is a hard one to call. And it's funny, when I was doing the Mayo season preview there not too long ago, I mean, we were talking about with Dara Berry, who's a journalist over there in Mayo, or actually in Galway, but he is a Mayo man. But like, we were chatting about the fact that there wasn't really, this is the first year in a long time where Mayo are coming in here with not too many injuries, not too many retirements. And lo and behold, Tommy Conroy picks up an ACL there during the week playing Sigerson Cup football. And looks very likely to miss the entirety of the year, which is obviously, you know, a horrible thing, really. Like, you wish him the best of recoveries there, and hopefully he gets back playing football soon, because an injury like that, not everyone recovers from it, unfortunately. And we've seen with Cillian O'Connor and his injury problems, and he's expected to come back in the league at some point, but who knows? Like, Colin McShane was missing for Tyrone for the best part of 2 years. You just don't know how players are going to respond to it. So that's a huge loss, really, from Mayo, to have another star-studded player like Tommy Conroy missing. And given the fact as well that Cillian O'Connor, we don't know the situation with him, another huge blow for Mayo.
Yeah, I mean, that's such a hammer blow, because you're looking at it more, I mean, through the lens of a Mayo fan. You're looking at it thinking, God, you know, we got to the All Ireland final. Tommy Conroy played so well against Dublin in the semi-final. He really stepped up. It was a real coming of age game for him, in my opinion. That one was. And then you're thinking, you know, you made it to the All Ireland final, and you did all that without Cillian O'Connor. So imagine when we get him back as well, and then you get O'Connor back and you lose Tommy Conroy. So I mean, it's a real hammer blow. Obviously, I wish Tommy nothing but the best. I mean, I hope he comes back, because he's a really exciting footballer to watch. I mean, he's really kind of adventurous, and he's an exciting player to watch because he goes for the goal, obviously, and his pace and his direct running. I mean, it's a joy to watch. But I feel like the one thing that will play such a huge part in this game is conditions. I think if it's a real wet, windy, gritty, hard day, I think that suits Monaghan. I think if the pitch kind of holds up and it's more kick passing, more fluid, more attacking football, I think it suits Mayo. But I think if it's a real gritty, you know, hard game in the rain or in the wind or something like that, I feel like it's Monaghan's to lose, because Monaghan have been through so many wars like this against Tyrone, obviously, last week. I feel like that's the kind of the unknown, that, you know, you could get out and the pitch could be waterlogged, and then that suits Monaghan.
Yeah, it is a fair point. Like, I think if this game is played in summery conditions, or Crow Park, or, you know, McHale Park on a sunny day, or even in Clones on a sunny day, I'd fancy Mayo definitely to turn them over and win it quite comfortably. I still do fancy them. I still do think they'll have enough here to beat Monaghan. Like, Monaghan are just they're such a hard team to call them anyways, because I think they're a lot better when they're chasing the game as opposed to game management. Like, the best football they probably played last year was when they fell behind against Armagh, having had a huge lead, and then Armagh obviously turned it around. I actually thought their best football was after that, and even against Galway as well when they were behind. So Monaghan are a weird team at times, and even Mayo as well. Like, both sides nearly play better when they're fighting from the dead. So who are you going for then in that aspect? I fancy Mayo to have enough here. I think even without Tommy Conroy and Cillian O'Connor, like, Jason Doherty's back in there, and you obviously have Ryan O'Donoghue still in top class form, and you know, a whole host of talented players all across the board, even with Aidan O'Shea potentially coming back into the starting lineup. So who are you going for here?
I think I'll go Mayo. Just I think it will be a very, very tight game, and I wouldn't be surprised if Monaghan win, but I just think Mayo just about have the edge on them. Obviously, you mentioned the forwards that they have. I think Monaghan won't start McManus again. I think they're trying to kind of lighten the burden on him. But the reality is that every time he comes in, I mean, he's the main man again. So I feel like Mayo just about have more in the tank scoring-wise than Monaghan do. But, I mean, as I mentioned, the conditions are the unknown. If the conditions are shocking, I mean, that could really favour Monaghan. But I'm just going to go with Mayo on this one.
Yeah, could do. Like, and you mentioned Conor McManus. Yeah, he didn't start versus Tyrone, and none of Monaghan's full forward line got on the score sheet on the day. So I'm sure to be targeting, clicking their forwards like Jack McCarron and Aaron Mulligan to get them into gear. Donegal and Kildare. I mean, we were speaking obviously about Donegal there briefly, and that huge, well, not a huge lead that they had against Mayo, but it felt like a huge lead because they had that penalty to go 6 points up, and Mayo were down to 14 men as well. And Donegal obviously playing in Markovich Park, which isn't Mayo's traditional home ground, so it was almost like a neutral venue in many ways. Like, Sligo's actually in between both Donegal and Mayo, so it was almost like a neutral game. But yeah, like, you were looking at Donegal and you were thinking, how on earth have they not won that game? I mean, they were home and hosed in many ways, and once again, like, another game for Donegal that sort of just gets away from them once again.
Yeah, absolutely right. I mean, Donegal, they disappoint you sometimes with the amount of talent that they have. I mean, in the first half, Michael Langan's performance was absolutely fantastic. Ryan McHugh kicked some great points. McBrearty, Michael Murphy, the talent that they have is unbelievable. And to see Tyrone go on and win the All Ireland last year, I mean, Donegal beat Tyrone in 2020. They came close to beating them in 2021. They must be sitting there thinking, why can't we win the All Ireland? And they absolutely have the talent to win the All Ireland, in my opinion. But they just have this streak where I don't know if they just get overconfident or something. But against Cavan, that was particularly against Cavan. That was the game where I just thought they're just waiting for Cavan to fold. They're waiting for Cavan to panic and to make mistakes. And Cavan didn't do that day. And then against Mayo as well, I don't know, did they think that they had the game won? Did they start, getting too confident? Because obviously what led to the Robbie Henley free going over the bar was that they were playing it around the back and Sean Patton got caught with the ball. So I don't know what it is. And on a day like that, when the conditions are so bad, keep ball, hand passing it around is so hard to do because the ground is so heavy and mistakes are very easy to make. And I think it was a bad call to do that, and they got punished for it. You mentioned that it wasn't that big a lead, but on a day like that, a 4-point lead on a day like that is a lot harder than a 4-point lead on a sunny day. And I mean, I just feel like the amount of criticism that Donegal have had, I think that we could see a bite back this week. I mean, Kildare, they have them at home. Kildare obviously put a lot of effort into the Kerry game to show people that they're not here to make up the numbers. But now they go away to Donegal. That's a completely different challenge. And I just feel like this is Donegal's game to lose. But that being said, if they get their overconfidence streak, they could definitely get punished in this game.
Yeah, do you know what I think it is as well? Like, there's no variation really in Donegal's play. They actually remind me a lot of Dublin in many ways, the way they play. Like, it's hand passing, it's lateral hand passes. There isn't really much direct kicking into that full forward line, and it's relying on Michael Murphy to come up the field and gather possession and look for options in front of them. And I just think a lot of teams are figuring that style of play out. And like what you said there, like, it was absolute madness, really. Like, Sean Patton coming as far out as there, like, in those kind of conditions, and just playing with fire in many ways. And we're seeing more and more teams actually getting caught trying to do that. We've seen Dublin, obviously, against Mayo last year get caught when they were playing it around the back and eventually gave away a free that led to, funny enough, another Robbie Henley late free. So kind of, funny how both of them two things were very similar to each other. But yeah, like, there's just not enough variation, I don't think, in Donegal's play. And they certainly do have the players there, but I don't know, like, I'd be worried for Declan Bonner in many ways. I just don't know if he's going to get Donegal where he feels he can get them to in terms of not just winning an Ulster, but potentially beyond. So, big pressure on them going into this game. But like what you said, I do think they should have enough to turn over Kildare. Like, this is it's a difficult one for Kildare going away to Donegal. Potentially tough conditions as well. We'll see what the weather's like there. And Kildare, I think, were buoyed up mainly by, obviously, the fans in Newbridge. I think really, really got behind them. But I don't know, maybe I'm being a bit harsh. Is there any chance for Kildare to potentially cause an upset, do you think?
I think, yeah, obviously there's a chance, but I think it's very unlikely. I think, if I'm being 100% honest, I do think that the opening day and the home crowd and everything, and this is where it all kicks off. I think Kildare had a lot of momentum and a lot of I would see it as kind of similar to when Antrim beat Clare in the hurling league last season, where they had this one day that they were just waiting for to kind of show the country how good they were. I fear that there might be an element of that with Kildare, that they were waiting for this day one for so long that they might not have been as focused on day two. And it's a trip away to Donegal where they have no home comforts. They're going to be up, and the conditions, I imagine, won't be the best. And I can't see them beating Donegal. They definitely have the talent to give Donegal a right good game. I mean, Daniel Flynn, Kevin Feely, I think, will start this game. He looked imperious when he came on against Kerry. Kevin Flynn as well is another footballer that I really, really like. Paul Cribben was back last weekend, looked fantastic. I do think that they definitely have the players to give Donegal a serious game. But I just think Glenn Ryan hasn't been in the job long enough to kind of implement exactly what he wants. Whereas while it is predictable enough what Donegal are going to do, they know what they're going to do. And I think I can't see them not winning this game. If they don't, I think there's huge pressure on Bonner.
Yeah, there really is, because I think if Donegal were to slip up in this one, I think relegation is a serious threat. I think it's already a potential threat anyways, but I think if they were to lose this, you'd be seriously worried for them after that. And yeah, it probably is worth mentioning as well, like Kerry didn't score for the final 16 to 17 minutes of that game, and we're missing their best midfield. So maybe on another day, if Kerry did have their best midfield available and just shown a bit more, maybe in attack in the final sort of 5 to 10 minutes, they might have just maybe squeezed over the line. But you definitely can't take anything away from a Kildare point of view. So I would go for a Donegal victory there as well. Moving on to Division 2, starting with Meath and Roscommon. Big game for Meath, like very underwhelming performance against Galway, 45 minutes without scoring. A lot of pressure already on Andy McEntee before going into that game, and that that pressure is really sort of elevated again now. So, and this is a tough one. Like Roscommon, they're going to be promotion contenders. So, big game for Meath.
Yeah, and you mentioned it yourself about the pressure that was on McEntee. I mean, he hung on to his job by his fingernails there before the season began. I mean, it was a razor close decision that they decided to keep him. A lot of people in the county want him gone. And that was not the start to make if you want to convince people that you are the man for the job. I mean, 45 minutes without scoring a point is unbelievable. Like, I've never seen anything like that. And not only that, but you concede 1-9 on top of that. Galway just looks so superior. And a team that have consistently managed to put Galway to the pin of their collars is Roscommon. And not only that, Roscommon know what it takes to get out of Division 2. They've done it so many times. They're almost like in that space where they're almost, at times, they're too good for Division 2, but they're not good enough for Division 1, which is why they keep bouncing between the two. But they know what it takes to get out of Division 2. With Meath, on the flip side, I'm there logically thinking, surely there's got to be a bounce. Surely there has to be, like, the humiliation of not scoring for 45 minutes is surely there has to be a bit of a kick where the pride will come in. We're going to show people how good we are. We've got Roscommon at home. Let's get the crowd down. Let's get the fans interested. Let's go for it. I think surely they'll have to. But with Roscommon, they're so wise. I mean, the way that they just shut down Cork last week and just showed their experience against Cork, I could see them doing the same thing to Meath.
Yeah. I mean, it is a fair point. Like, and interesting enough with Roscommon, like they are missing a lot of their best players who are obviously away with Padraig Pearce's at the minute. And you were even looking at that team that played against Cork, and it was nowhere near their best, really. Like, you'd obviously Downey Smith playing in a full forward, you'd Ultan Harney in round midfield. Like, you'd a lot of players who were almost a part of Roscommon of 6-7 years ago, and potentially, and then came back into the team. Like, they sort of went with more experienced players rather than maybe giving the under 20s a chance. And it definitely did work, obviously, because they overturned Cork quite comfortably in the end. So, but yeah, I agree with you at the same time as well. I think for me, like, you would expect a bounce here. Like, Andy McEntee didn't do any interviews at all after the game against Galway, so he was obviously thick as a bull, I'd imagine. So, I think surely, like, Meath have to show some sort of response here. I think if they don't show much of a response here, you'd be really worried about them going in for Division 2. Given the fact Tier 2 is there as well, we'll see what happens. Meath and Dublin could play each other in a Leinster semi, and look, I know Dublin aren't, at their best either at the minute, but there is the potential for Meath to be playing in that Halcyon Cup, which I think, given where Meath looked when they played against Dublin last year, I think if they were to fall into that conversation, it would be a bit of a disaster.
Yeah, and I think that would be the bullet for Andy McEntee from the Meath job if they were to fall into the Halcyon Cup. I mean, the history that Meath have and the pride that they have in their football, there's no way they're going to accept that. And as well as that, you're not just thinking about the past here, you're thinking about the future as well for Meath. I mean, the underage talent that they have coming through already, some guys that have come into the team, Shane Walsh, Jordan Morris, Cathal Hickey, they look very, very promising. And you've got these, minor All Ireland winners who are on the cusp of the senior team, I'd imagine, over the next 5 years. And you're thinking, is Andy McEntee the man to bring these guys into the team? Because the one thing I have noticed, obviously it's circumstantial. Obviously everything is circumstantial. But I mean, me and you obviously watching the Dublin games over the years, Meath seem to have a different team every single time that they play against Dublin. I mean, 2019, they were very reliant on Ben Brennan and Mickey Newman. 2020, it was all about, Jordan Morris, Shane Walsh. 2021, Matthew Costello got into the team. Players seem to come and go a lot from the Meath team. They don't seem to be able to keep a crop together. And I don't know if that's McEntee, I don't know if that's travelling commitments, etc. But they have a few lads now that have gone over to Australia. Conor Nash is over there. Keane McBride is over there. They're big losses. But you wonder if they got a manager back there who was able to kind of bring the young lads through, create a real buzz about the county team. Could it be like a Derry situation where you have your Conor Glass comes back, Anton Toho comes back, and, gives that a turbocharge again? Because, I mean, with those young lads coming through, they cannot waste this talent.
Yeah, 100%. Like, and we were saying there, players like Cathal Hickey as well, like, and Matthew Costello came into the fold last year. So, and there is plenty of, obviously they won the minor All Ireland last year, so there will be some of those lads moving up into the under 20s in the next couple of years. So it probably is so important for me to stay around sort of high Division 2, Division 1 maybe, and not fall into Division 3. Who are you going for here then to get the win, or what are you thinking?
Do you know what? I want to think that there's going to be a bounce back from Meath, but I think the level of an unhappy camp that Meath could have is something that we don't know. I mean, McEntee not doing the match, any sort of interview after the match is not a good look. And then obviously the fact that he clung on to his job by the skin of his teeth, and obviously losing Mickey Newman as well before the season began. I feel like they'll go for this. Jordan Morris will start, rightfully so. But I just think Roscommon they're too wise, they're too experienced, they know what it takes, and I can see them kind of picking up a quiet enough victory here, like not making too much fuss about it. I can see it being a 3-4 point victory for Roscommon.
Yeah, I'm going to go a draw, actually. I think there will be a bounce from Meath, and I think they will play well, but at the same time, you could see Roscommon probably just holding the fourth maybe a little bit towards the end of the game. You've got Cork and Clare then up next. For Cork, I mean, not maybe an unhappy camp or maybe anything like that, but there is obviously a little bit of discontent in there at the minute with a lot of players opting out. You had Luke Connolly, who opted out there during the week, and Rory Dean's not going to be in there as well. Mark Collins, like a lot of Cork players not available for the upcoming year, and it does seem like they're going to be quite reliant on that under-20 crop from a few years ago, which I think could be a good thing. It could be a blessing in disguise in some ways, maybe in the next couple of years, but again, for Keith Ricken, they'll really be targeting this game surely for a bounce back from defeat to Roscommon and get the 2 points here.
Without doubt. I mean, it wasn't the start that they would have wanted. That's kind of the logic that I went with the Roscommon Meath game. That, I mean, Roscommon were just so good at just shutting down, such hype and excitement low key, because the amount of talent that Cork have coming through, the likes of Blake Murphy, Damien Gore, I mean, they speaks for themselves. But yeah, right, it's not a good look when your best players are gone. Mark Collins, Rory Dean, like they have been the best players for Cork over the last few years. But yeah, right, that it could be a blessing in disguise that they get these young lads into the team. I just remember last season, Clare obviously were on the brink of promotion to Division 1, and they had that game against Cork to kind of decide, like they were already going to be in the promotion playoff pretty much, and they had that game against Cork, and it would basically decide if they lost, they'd play Mayo, who no one really saw them beating, and if they won, they would play, I think it was Kildare or Meath that they would play.
I think it was Meath, yeah.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people would have given them a chance to turn over Meath that day, which obviously Kildare went on to do. So I think that was their big chance, and still with so much on the line that day, they lost to Cork. So I think it's hard to tell. Clare probably have got better. I mean, the young lads that have come into the side, the likes of Darragh Bohannon, Gavin Cooney, I'm very impressed with them. And obviously Jamie Malone coming back into the fold and looking very, very good off the bench there the other day. I think that's a massive, a good sign for Clare. And they look very impressive after 25 minutes against Offaly. They looked very, very impressive for the rest of the game. They had a slow start, but apart from that, they were fantastic. And against Cork, I just wonder, can Cork turn it around? That's what I mean, because they didn't look that good against Roscommon.
Yeah. Do you think Clare are being disrespected a little bit at times as well? Like, I mean, they are a team that's been consistently in Division 2 and consistently been wrote off for relegation. And they seem to keep proving people wrong time and time again with big performances, big results, even against Mayo as well. Like, I didn't see them. I thought Mayo would win that one comfortably enough, and they pushed Mayo very, very close. And we've seen what Mayo went on to do in getting all the way to an All Ireland final. Obviously, things didn't go well against Kerry, but we seen the form that Kerry were in throughout Munster. They were giving everyone a hammering, really. So, I mean, could Clare cause an upset here? Could they cause a shock? And do you think maybe that some people potentially maybe are kind of writing them off, maybe unjustly at times?
Yeah, I mean, me myself, I've made the mistake of writing them off a few times. I mean, like naturally, because I just think that the same guys are doing it for them. I know that I mentioned about the young lads coming in, the Bahannans and the Gavin Coonies, etc. But you look at Jamie Malone, Keelan Sexton, David Tuberty's still there. I mean, you're thinking on some level, how are these guys still going? They're getting so much out of a golden crop of players. And when they were doing pretty much what they're doing now, being a solid team in Division 2, and then they lose Gary Brennan, and then they lose, someone like Aaron Fitzgerald to the Hurlers. You're thinking, all right, could that be the one or two players that go that make all the difference? Because replacing someone like Gary Brennan for a county like Clare is going to be so hard to do. I mean, he's a once in a generation type player, and the way that they've just managed to keep going, just produce another team and get back on the horse has really, really impressed me. And I think it's time I give them the respect as well. I think they're going to beat Cork. I think they'll do it narrowly, but I think with last year in the back of their minds and the hurt from losing that game, I think they'll get the job done here.
Yeah, I agree as well. I'm going to go with Clare to win this one as well. I think Owen Cleary as well, like one of the best footballers really for Clare and potentially in the country really at times. We've seen some of the points he's kicked from the sideline and some top class scores he scored at different times in the game as well. Maybe if Cork have some of the Finbars lads back in there like Ian Maguire or Brian Hayes, maybe Stephen Sherlock, maybe they might be able to have enough here. But again, it's going to take time for them to be integrated into the team and train with a lot of the other players as well. So it'd be interesting to see what happens there. But yeah, I'd go with a Clare victory there as well. You've Offaly and Derry then. I mean, Derry, obviously a lot of hype around them at the minute, overturned down comfortably enough in Park Esler. Offaly, we're 5 points to 1 up against Clare at one stage in the game. So, the wheels really did fall off for Offaly after a very good start. So who do you reckon will come out on top here?
I'd go for Derry here. I think their momentum is stronger than the Offaly momentum. But I mean, I look at last year's league final in Division 3. I mean, that was a very, very one-sided affair. And I mean, since then, obviously, Gallagher will just have had more time to kind of get his ideas in. And I mean, the way that Derry kind of put away Down, I mean, Down didn't get a score from play in the second half. I mean, that speaks volumes of how strong the Derry defence is. I mean, a fullback line of Chrissy McCaig, Brendan Rodgers is just so impressive. McKinless, his injury, I mean, the centre half back for Derry, I mean, that could be a big loss if he's gone. But I think the form of Conor Glass, the form of Emma Bradley, the form of Ciarán McFall especially, he was fantastic against Down the other day. I think they will have too much roughly. I think, I'm going to go with Derry to win this one.
Yeah, I'd agree as well. Like I think for Offaly, like this probably is just a game maybe coming too soon for them. I mean, obviously, let's not forget these two played each other in Croke Park in the Division 3 final, and Derry obviously wiped the floor with them that day. But Offaly missing Keane Farrell, who's out injured for the entirety of the season, and probably maybe a little bit early for a lot of those under 20 players to come through. So I think for Offaly, I do think they'll come good eventually, maybe at being a consistent Division 2 team, maybe in a similar fashion to Clare, but probably is just a little bit early. Yeah, you've Down and Galway there as well. Down, I watched the game against Derry and I thought in the first half they done all right. Like they looked threatening at times, but really like not in a month of Sundays where we're Down ever going to win that game. Like Derry looks so comfortable, even without being at their best at all. So Galway looking superb against Meath. Obviously, as you were saying there, 1-9 in the first half to no score. The momentum is behind them as well. So I think a lot of people would fancy Galway surely to win this one, even with the fact that it is a Newry.
Yeah, I mean, Galway are, in my opinion, this is a very, very competitive division, but I think Galway stand above as being, the most talented team in Division 2 right now. We went for Galway to top the division, and then between Derry and Roscommon to get promoted with Galway. But this would be a tricky game. I mean, it looks like a potential banana skin. I mean, James McCartan's back in there as down manager. He definitely would give them a bit of a bounce. I mean, last time he was in charge, they lost by a point to Cork in the All Ireland final of 2010, and this was a brilliant Cork team. So, and then remember how they got to the final. I mean, they wiped the floor with Kerry in the quarterfinal that year. They beat Kildare in an epic in the semi-final. So McCartan can get the bounce out of them. They did okay, as you said, against Derry. I mean, they never looked like they were going to win, but they showed that they'd improved. Last season, Donegal just put them away with minimal fuss in the Ulster Championship. So, I mean, McCartan will come back in. He'll give them a bit of a bounce. I think the Kilcoo lads being missing, I think, is a big blow. But I think there was mentioned on the Sunday game, the big issue with Down is the amount of players that they've had in their county panel over the last few years is absolutely mind-blowing. I think it was something like, was it 80 players or something? I wouldn't want to say
85, 80 or 85 or something like that. Yeah, crazy.
That's
over the last 3 years or 4 years or something, yeah.
Because I was saying, how can you establish a level of stability or, your message if there's new players in the door every week?
Yeah, it is mad, all right. And maybe you might even see Down or overachieving a little bit by being in Division 2, given the amount of players that are leaving. And it's kind of mad. Like, I was chatting to someone else there during the week as well, and they were saying, maybe they should just field Kilcoo for Division 2. Once Kilcoo finish up in the in the All Ireland club final there, like maybe they should just go in and just replace the entire Down team. Now, obviously, that's not how it works, and that wouldn't be fair at all on the Down players that are there. But you can understand the logic behind it in many ways. Like in Newry, look, it's a tough place to go at times. I'm sure it'll make it tough for Galway. It'll be interesting to see how James McCartan, what kind of style he has with Down, and whether they're sort of, it looked like they were sort of reverting back to a similar sort of Paddy Tally style in the Derry game. But again, you can understand why they had that approach given Derry's attack and threat. So, you would have to fancy Galway though, surely, like with Shane Walsh, who probably is one of the best forwards in the country on his day. And, even some of those under 20 players that are coming through as well, like Matthew Tierney and Tom O'Callaghan obviously scored the winner there the other week in the Sigerson Cup. So, you have a real whole host of young players coming through. So, I mean, Galway in Division 2, this could be a perfect time for them to bring through these young players.
Yeah, absolutely right. I mean, Culhane got the goal against Meath. I know it was a soft goal. Matthew Tierney looks fantastic. Jack Glynn as well in the corner. I like seeing Kieran Malloy get a start. I mean, he's always a player that I've thought is really, really good. Killian McDade at wing back, he looks a real find. I mean, I know that he has been floated about for a few years, but they haven't really known where to put him. I think wing back looks like a really nice position for him to go there. Paul Conroy looked fantastic, looked back to his best. I mean, he's definitely a key influence for this side. And then we still don't even know where Damien Comer is. So Galway look really, really good. And the amount of talent that they have, the strength and depth, obviously the young lads coming through that you mentioned. I think this is a game where they get the job done with minimal fuss. I think this will be a comfortable enough victory for Galway.
Yeah, 100%. And AJ Walsh O'Donnell was asking us what we thought of the Tommy Conroy injury. Yeah, we spoke about that a little bit earlier, but it obviously is a huge blow for Mayo, and it's going to be tough for them this year, missing a lot of their, obviously missed Killian O'Connor last year. But funny thing is about Mayo, like even when they get injuries, even when they get some of their top players injured and retirements and all the rest, you just really can't write them off. So I certainly wouldn't be writing them off even with that Tommy Conroy injury. I suppose we're both going for a Galway victory here anyways before we move on to Division 3.
Yeah, I think so.
100%. Antrim Limerick then will fly through Division 3 and 4 here. But Antrim and Limerick, I mean, Antrim, what a win that was for them away against Fermanagh. I mean, a huge victory to go to Brewster Park and win by 9 points. And Limerick are one of them teams that have been consistently really on an upward trajectory over the past couple of years since they came up from Division 4. So, I mean, this could be a bit of a potential promotion game here on the line.
Yeah, and out of all the games in these two divisions, I think this one is the toughest to call because they both had comprehensive enough victories in the first round. I think Antrim's was a little bit more impressive. I mean, to beat Fermanagh, but to beat them out the gate, like very very comfortable victory. I really like Enda McGinley. I really like the way that he is. The way that he's working. I mean, the lads from the Saffron Voice they were talking about, just how different Antrim look. Like they look so relaxed on the ball now, so confident. McGinley's come in as an All Ireland winner, 3-time All Ireland winner, multiple All Star as well. He's just come in, stuck his chest out, and he's made the players feel real confident. And Antrim, in my opinion, have always been a sleeping giant. I mean, the population that they have, if they can get them engaged, they can be one of the best teams. And yeah, he's definitely managing to kind of squeeze it, all the talent that they have out of this side. They look so good against Fermanagh, shut them down with relative ease. Limerick, on the other hand, 4 goals. I mean, to put that past Longford in the first week, very impressive. I mean, the footballers that they have, I mean, everyone knows about Ian Corbett. Then as well, they have Hugh Burke in the forwards, who is a player that I really like. I think Danny Neville, I think whether or not he plays, I think that will have a big impact on the game. He's a really, really exciting forward. But just because it's at home, I think I'd go with Antrim to win this one.
Yeah, I'd probably agree with you there as well. Like, I think, funny enough, actually, last time these two played was in Division 4, and it was just before the pandemic. And I think Antrim won it by 18 or 19 points. It was a bizarre scoreline, really, just right before the pandemic. So, you don't associate with Limerick losing by a scoreline like that. So it's kind of mad how the tables have turned in many ways. And I would definitely expect this to be a very competitive game. And maybe if Limerick are going to win this, it will be through goals. Like, that seems to be kind of the way of playing for them. They rely quite a lot on goals, but an extremely hard one to call. And I don't know, maybe I'll go for a draw. Maybe I'll go for the safe bet there. But Wicklow Fermanagh, I mean, we were talking about Antrim and Limerick being a promotion game. This could potentially be a real fight for who stays in the division. Whoever loses this might be in big trouble. Wicklow, I thought they were impressive against Westmeath. Like they really dug deep, and I was keeping an eye on the scoreline there and nearly pulled off the shock. But Fermanagh, on the other hand side of things, like a 9-point defeat at home to Antrim really wouldn't be, it's kind of alarm bells ringing there a little bit, because normally Fermanagh is so good at home. So what do you think going into this one?
I think I could see a Wicklow victory here. I really do. I mean, I agree with you fully that they were impressive against Westmeath, and obviously staying in Division 3 last year, they beat Cavan to do that. So they have it in them to beat a side who, would be assumed to be above their station. And obviously, like a good friend of mine, Kieran Coffey, he was saying that there's a real group of lads there in the Wicklow side that are really dedicated to the panel, and they really want to do Wicklow football proud. And they've got a relatively young team. They got a relatively young team, a lot of young stars. They're going Darcy, who, I mean, in my opinion, he will blossom eventually for Wicklow. We've yet to see him do that, but he will eventually come good for them. Dean Healy as well is another player that I think is absolutely fantastic. I mean, has been for Wicklow for many years. I mean, they're starting to get the recognition that they deserve. Pádraig O'Toole is another one who I think is a brilliant footballer. I think just getting them down in Ockram, I mean, Fermanagh, they just looked shaky. They didn't look like they ever were really going to trouble Antrim. And to lose so comfortably, going down to Wicklow now, who they won't let that loss against Westmeath get to them, I think this could be a Wicklow victory.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Fermanagh, though. I think Fermanagh, with potentially Conal Jones maybe coming back in there, I'm just expecting a bounce. Like, there is good footballers there. Beating Cavan last year, they always make it tough. Like, surely for Kieran Donnelly, obviously, who's come in there as manager, like, you'd expect a bounce and you'd expect them to be up for this game. But yeah, if they were to lose this, like, relegation to Division 4 is definitely a realistic possibility. You have Laois and Westmeath, two teams very familiar with each other. They tend to play each other quite often. More often than not, really, in both football and hurling down the years. And obviously played each other in the Leinster Championship last year. Westmeath won that by 16 points, having trailed, I think, after the first quarter. But look, I think Laois deserve a bit of credit. Like, I wrote them off really entirely going into Division 3, and they looked like a bit of a mess, really, at the start of the year, not knowing who they were going to appoint as manager. And, obviously Billy Sheehan coming in there, a lot of players opting out. But looked very good in pre-season, big win over Louth, and this is another promotion game really on the cards here.
Yeah, and the other thing you didn't mention there was that Wexford put 6 goals past them in the first game of the O'Byrne Cup. I mean, that jumped off, and we're thinking, what is going on here? But I mean, they've bounced back really well from that. And Sheehan seems to he's already kind of implemented what his spine is. I mean, he likes the spine in the defence of O'Loughlin at 6 and Trevor Collins as the fullback. And then, that is a good platform for them to go forward. He seems to be getting the best out of the likes of Evan O'Carroll. And as well as that, obviously up in the forwards as well. I mean, you have Owen Lowry, Mark Barry as well as popping up with points every game for Laois. I mean, the game last season will be a very interesting one to just kind of see, how much have Laois improved since that game, because what was it, 320 to 110 Westmeath won by. So, I mean, Westmeath again hasn't looked very good last week. I mean, the footballers that they have, they're a very solid team, in my opinion. I mean, they've been doing the business for quite a few years. I mean, I know they got relegated from Division 2 last year, but they had the quality, and not too long ago they were in Division 1. So, I mean, personally, I think it's very, very hard to call, but I'm almost edging towards Laois just on the momentum side.
Yeah, like it could be all right. Like, and I definitely wouldn't have thought that really at the start of the league campaign. Like, Wicklow nearly turned Westmeath over, and I think a lot of people had Wicklow down, maybe potentially who were going to finish bottom down in 8th. But yeah, I would still fancy Westmeath though to have enough here and get the victory with the likes of John Heslin, Ronan O'Toole, Luke Loughlin as well. I don't think it will be as big as that 16-point victory, but obviously that game when these two played each other, it wasn't that long ago, really, like just 5-6 months ago. So probably still a little bit of work for Laois to do, but I would just fancy Westmeath maybe to narrowly come through that. Longford and Louth then as well. Hard one to call in many ways. Both got disappointing defeats on the opening day. Could maybe the Longford train be running out a little bit, maybe, given the fact that they've been consistently around sort of Division 3 for quite a while and relying on a lot of players like Mickey Quinn and Rian Brady, and obviously a tough enough defeat to take against Limerick that day. So, I mean, what's the verdict here, do you reckon?
I think this game will show whether...
Oh, I think we've lost Shay there briefly. I think we've lost Shay there briefly for a minute, but we'll wait for him to come back in there. Hopefully he should be coming back in there in a minute. But yeah, Longford versus Louth. I mean, this is an interesting one in many ways. Like, I mean, Louth as well coming into this game, obviously on the back of that defeat away at Laois as well. So, or home to Laois, I should say. And I fancy Louth to get promoted quite early on. So it will be interesting to see what happens in this one. But for myself personally, anyway, I'll probably... Do you know what? I think this might be a draw, to be perfectly honest. I think there might be a draw between the two, between both Longford and Louth, but we'll see what happens there. We'll carry on for now, really, until we get Shay back in there. Well, Sligo and Carlow, I mean, this is another interesting one as well. Like, Sligo got a huge victory there over who was it again? Who was it over? My mind's gone blank there. It was over Wexford. That's who it was. It was a big win, obviously, away at Wexford. They played very well, very good performance in there. And there probably is maybe a narrative, maybe that we've Shay coming back in there, I think.
Yeah.
There we go. We've got you back in there anyways. Yeah, I've moved on to Division 4 anyway. I just fired on there anyway. So Sligo and Carlow, what do you think here? I mean, I was just saying there, like, Sligo with a big win, obviously, away against Wexford, and Division 4 very hard to call, obviously. So what do you think here?
Obviously Carlow had the kind of shock loss to London at home. So you're talking about the bounce factor there. I feel like surely there's going to be a bit of a bounce coming for Carlow. I mean, Neil Carew is a man who kind of expects a lot from his Carlow side. I mean, you remember that they lost in the championship, and he was saying that he was going to have them back in training there in 2 weeks for the next season. So he is a man who's going to kind of demand a lot from his players. Sligo, on the other hand, impressive victory against Wexford away in Wexford Park. They won by 2 points. Obviously, Pat Spillane as well, declaring for Sligo. I mean, there's a lot of good things happening in the county. And then they had, that very successful under-20 side not too long ago. So a lot of talent there, a lot of good signs for Sligo. Personally, I'd be kind of leaning towards them for this game. because of the kind of lack of momentum in Carlow, not being able to beat London at home, who hadn't played an inter-county game in 2 years. I mean, surely they won't be able to beat Carlow then. Surely they won't be able to beat Sligo then either.
Yeah, I'd probably agree with you to that point as well. Like, I think to have a 10-point lead and let that slip, and look, like we'll crack on with London, obviously, and their huge victory, obviously, over Carlow, well spoken about, obviously, in the weekend. And I know someone commented on one of the recent YouTube videos there saying London, they have the potential to take points off the likes of your Leithrams, your Waterfords, potentially your Sligos at home. So it's an interesting one with London. Like, they're a hard team to call, really, because no one's seen them play, obviously, in 2 years. They haven't had a game of any sort. They've almost a completely new panel. You've obviously Liam Gavahan, who was in the team of the week, and Killian Butler, meant to be another player who stood out there as well. And going up against Waterford, who probably surprised a lot of people as well with a draw against Tipperary. A lot of people fancying Tipperary for promotion. So, I mean, two teams that no one really expected to be in the promotion chase could very well find themselves up there come the end of the 70 minutes.
Yeah, and I mean, it definitely shook up the division. I mean, because Tipperary and Cavan, they were the obvious two that you're saying, well, they're going to have no problems going straight back up. But the way that Waterford held them, I mean, they showed so much grit, and obviously Effie Fitzgerald coming in there, the amount of success that he had in charge of the Cork ladies, I mean, speaks for itself. A good, very, very good start for him in charge of the Waterford footballers. And against London, I mean, the momentum that they're going to have off the back of, beating Carlow, I mean, would be unbelievable. But yeah, you're right. This is a very hard one to call because both sides are coming into this with very, very high momentum. I feel like I'd lean towards Waterford maybe, just because that they drew with a side like Tipperary who have the talent of Deshaun O'Connor, Conor Sweeney, etc. So yeah, I feel like I'd lean towards Waterford here, but just.
Yeah, very hard one to call. And I know Dara Corcoran hit 5 points there for Waterford against Tipperary, and I've done an interview with him there a year ago. So it's great to see him breaking into the team now and really sort of staking his claim with this Waterford team. But yeah, I'd probably agree with you as well. Like, I think with Effie Fitzgerald in there as well, top manager. I mean, obviously won an All Ireland with the Cork ladies, and he's been heavily involved in Cork club football down the years as well. So, you could see Waterford maybe causing a few scalps this year, and I do fancy them to just about nick a win over London. But I certainly won't be writing London off, and if London were to make it 2 wins from 2, it wouldn't be that surprising either. You've Cavan going up against Wexford then. Wexford, I mean, very disappointing defeat for them at home to Sligo. A lot of people looking at Wexford maybe as a team battling for promotion. Obviously, Cavan coming in on the back of that win versus Leitrim. So, I mean, for Wexford, if they lose this, maybe their promotion chances might be over.
Yeah, and I think they will lose. I can't see Cavan losing this game. I mean, they went away to Park Sean McDermott, Andy Moran's first game. Leitrim were going to be up for that, and they managed to get the win. They didn't look overly impressive, but they managed to get the win. They took a while to put them away, but they got the job done in the end. I think with Wexford coming to play them now, I think that's a completely different challenge. And yeah, I can see Cavan losing this one. I mean, McKeon and the likes of footballers that they have, Galligan and goal, like, I can't see them losing this game.
Yeah, no, I'd agree with you there as well. I think Cavan surely should have enough to come through. Like, I mean, the only kind of question would be every now and again with Cavan last year, you've seen them have a bit of a howler, and you'd wonder maybe could there be one in store this weekend, but you would surely have to fancy them to turn over Wexford. Like, they had, I think, a lot of their top players playing against Leitrim, and Gerald McKernan, Raymond Galligan, Thomas Galligan there, I think, came off the bench as well, and Paddy Lynch looks like a great find. So, and I have seen there's a lot of discontent in Wexford at the minute over the club championship there, with the fact that the club football championship has been scheduled for winter next year. So I know there's a bit of discontent among Wexford footballers at the minute. But you've obviously got Tipperary and Leitrim then, last but not least. I mean, Tipperary, you know what? Like, I didn't really fancy Tipperary for promotion at the start of the year, because there's been a lot of inconsistency with Tipperary really over the past couple of years. Like, players opting out, players leaving the panel, and like Conor Sweeney, from what I heard, was unbelievable against Waterford. He hit 7 points, but he was only one of 3 scorers on the day. So you'd be looking at Tipperary, and they're probably looking for a bit more than Conor Sweeney at this stage. And obviously Leitrim coming in with Andy Moore, and might be a good time to play Leitrim. But what do you think?
Well, no, because at the start of the year, if you had asked me, do I think that Leitrim would beat Waterford, I probably would have said yes. So the fact that Waterford were able to hold Tip to a draw, I mean, now that Leitrim don't have the home advantage that Waterford did, but I mean, Leitrim are coming in with a lot of freshness and optimism as well because of the Andy Moran effect. And Tip, on the other hand, you mentioned, so reliant on Conor Sweeney that, if Leitrim put someone on him and managed to shut him down, I feel like it could get pretty nasty for Tip. I mean, if they're not able to, lighten the burden on him, Sean O'Connor is probably going to have to step up for them. But yeah, for the record, I do think Tipperary are going to win this game. But I feel like it could be a lot trickier than a lot of people are making out like it will be.
Yeah, I mean, only 4 points between Leitrim and Cavan the last day, and maybe Leitrim might be able to pull off a shock. And a break from the norm game, and says there, Tip won All Ireland minor and semi All Ireland in 2016. What happened to them? And that's the point, really, isn't it? A lot of the players just have either opted out, or you've obviously Colin O'Riordan, who's away playing AFL. So Mickey Quinlivan's obviously opted out there as well. So a lot of that sort of bulk of Tipperary talent just isn't there, and that's probably one of the main reasons why they've fallen down the pecking order in the league. Yeah, but I don't know about this one. Like, I have a sneaky feeling Leitrim might be able to pull off a surprise win here, but it is a very, very hard one to call. I suppose before we wrap up, who would be your player to watch this weekend, or do you think any players maybe could I suppose steal the limelight this weekend?
Yeah, well, like, one player I'm going to be keeping an eye on myself is obviously Rian O'Neill. The performance he had against Dublin and Croke Park. I mean, but then again, that is Croke Park. That's a wide open field. He has a lot of space to run around. Against Tyrone, he won't have that space that he had against Dublin. So it'll be very interesting to see if his form continues. Owen Cleary as well from Clare is another footballer that I'd love to keep an eye on this weekend. I mean, his role in the Cork game, I think, will be very important. Then obviously, Oran Eastwood for Antrim. I mean, he's been a critical scorer for them. I think that game in Division 3 between Antrim and Limerick is going to be vitally important, as we mentioned earlier, for who goes up. And then obviously in the Division 4, the player I'd be keeping an eye on probably be McKiernan for Cavan. I mean, he's an elite level footballer, and I feel like he'll have a massive impact on getting them through Wexford, in my opinion.
Yeah, 100%. They're all good mentions there. Like, one player I'll be interested to see is Joe O'Connor, obviously coming back into the Kerry panel. Was involved a couple of years ago, and Kerry's midfield against Kildare I thought looked weak enough, and you're obviously putting Sean O'Shea in there, who isn't a natural midfielder. So it'll be interesting to see how he gets on going up against the likes of your Brian Fentons and whatnot. That could definitely be an interesting watch. But yeah, I suppose before we wrap up, obviously your own podcast, Play On GAA, where can people find that if they're looking for it?
Yeah, so it's just Play On GAA. It's on YouTube, it's on Instagram, and we're about to jump onto Spotify as well. So yeah, we're hoping to do big things in the new year. Keep up with kind of the two of us, myself and Luke. We're both in college, so both college students, got a lot of assignments to do, but we do our best to kind of cover as many parts of the GAA as we can. And yeah, so just Play On GAA on Instagram, on YouTube, and soon to be on Spotify as well.
Perfect. Yeah, well, I'll link it down below as always, Shay. And yeah, appreciate you coming on, and a few comments coming in there saying they enjoyed the show. So yeah, much appreciated for anyone who tuned in. And if you could leave a like or subscribe, that would be much appreciated as well. And obviously check out Shay's podcast as well, Play On GAA. That'll be down in the description down below. So yeah, cheers anyone who tuned in. And yeah, we'll see you all in the next one.